Shalom, and thank you for joining me on Through the Eyes of Scripture, where we always venture to study our Scripture and see the world through the eyes of Scripture. The section that we will be examining will concern the war and desolation. So Daniel 9:26 says, "And unto the end of war, desolations are determined." And in all honesty, this is self-explanatory. I mean, it means exactly what it says. At the end of war, desolations are determined. And really, we could just end the entire video with that. But normally, as you know, I never present anything to you without giving you these scriptures so that you are able to look at it for yourself. So let's go ahead and do that. First, let's go ahead and break down the key elements in this verse. War, desolations. Now, with wars in Daniel chapter 9, what you're going to find a lot of is it is actually frequently referencing Daniel chapter 11. In Daniel chapter 11, you have the king of the north that goes to war with the king of the south. You also have the king of the north who is making war with all the nations or many nations and going through and conquering most of them. Then you have in Daniel chapter 7, the same king of the north, and what he does is he declares war on the saints and prevails against them, which is also found in the book of Revelations. And then also, like I mentioned in Revelations, there's another war. It's a climax of a war where this same king is going to declare war on Yeshua as well. So pretty much self-explanatory. There are going to be wars. But at the end of wars, there was also going to be desolations. So in addition to the wars that are going on, you have Yeshua, who will return to specifically make war with the nations. And we see that in Joel 2 verse 9. It says, "Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up." That's Joel chapter 2 verse 9. And when you read the book of Joel, what you're going to find is that a lot of it is you're talking about the day of Yahuwah, which Yeshua is going to come and execute war and judgment on the nations. So I recommend reading all of Joel chapter 2. You can, of course, read all of it, the entire book. It's a very small book. But at a minimum, at least read the entire chapter of Joel chapter 2. What you're going to also find in there is you'll see nations that are named. They're going to be made a desolation. And you're also going to see judgment come on nations. And a lot of those nations that are named in there, you're also going to see it confirmed in other books of the Bible by the prophets like Jeremiah and I believe in Isaiah. So as we continue, I have some more verses for you. But the point is that there is a prophecy about certain nations that will become desolate. And for example, a lot of them are prophesied and named in Jeremiah 49. And in Jeremiah 49, you will find some of them also named in Joel 2. So we know that even if this did happen in the past, it is still a prophecy for the future, because Joel chapter 2 is specifically talking about the day of Yahuwah, which has not come just yet, the day of judgment, the day of recompense, a day of reckoning, a day of atonement. Nonetheless, that day has not happened. Those nations that are named, a decree has been made that they will be made desolate in the end times. So continuing, like I mentioned, he's going to make their lands desolate. And he will also go to war with the king of the north. So Yeshua is going to go to war with the king of the north, which is aka the beast. He has lots of different names, so you don't want to lose sight of that. He is the king of the Babylonian Empire. So the end of the war will result in the whore, which is that great city, that reigns over the kings of the earth. That will aka Mystery Babylon, that is going to be made desolate and cast into the sea. So he's going to, of course, as we know in the book of Revelations, there's going to be war with the climax of the war is going to be with this king of the north. Ultimately, he's not going to win. He's going to be cast into the lake of fire. He is the beast. But his empire, his kingdom, is going to be made desolate and cast into the sea. A big stone is going to be thrown on it and it's going to be cast into the sea. So this is a decree of desolation for Babylon. And as I mentioned, desolations have been decreed all throughout Scripture. One example is if you read Jeremiah 51:29, and the land shall tremble in sorrow, for every purpose of Yahuwah shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without inhabitant, as I mentioned before. And then we always talk about the day of Yahuwah, but the day of Yahuwah is what's called the day of visitation. So, what I'm discovering as I study scripture is that one event or even one group of people has multiple different names. For example, you have the king in the north, who is also the beast. He is also the man of perdition, the man of sin, the man of lawlessness. I mean, you name it, it's all one person. The children of Israel, we have so many different names, but we're all still the children of Israel. Even the Gentiles, you have strangers. I mean, we're called strangers in certain contexts as well, but you have Gentiles that are recognized as strangers, the heathen, the foreigner, things like that. Then we also have other groups that have just a variety of different names. And I think because we were not connecting the dots, it kept us from seeing the overall big picture. When we connect the dots, we will see it all kind of coincide into one vision. And so we have the day of Yahuwah, but there is another name which is the day of visitation. So Isaiah 10 verse 3, and what will ye do in the day of visitation? In the day of desolation, which shall come from far. To whom will ye flee for help? And where will ye leave your glory? Isaiah 10:3. So I just wanted to point out and highlight the day of visitation, which is a day of desolation, which is the day of Yahuwah. And more verses about the day of visitation is in Jeremiah 10:15. They are vanity and the work of errors, and the time of their visitation they shall perish. Or perhaps Jeremiah 46:21. Also her hired men are in the midst of her fatted bullocks, for they also are turned back and are fled away together. They did not stand, because the day of their calamity was come upon them, and the time of their visitation. And then the other one is Hosea 9:7. The days of visitation are come. The days of recompense are come. Israel shall know it. The prophet is a fool. The spiritual man is mad. For the multitude of thine iniquity and the great hatred. So again, the day of visitation is the day of judgment. And it's not to excuse the fact that the day of judgment is not just something that falls on Gentiles who are not grafted in. It also falls on hard-headed Israelites who have been removed. So keep that in perspective. So we've kind of explored the day of visitation. Let's look at desolations being decreed, because as I believe I mentioned earlier, desolations are decreed all throughout Scripture. There has already been a decree that tells us that Egypt, that different lands and different nations are decreed to be desolate. It is prophesied, it is written, it will happen. And so we have again Joel 3:19. Egypt shall be a desolation, and Edom shall be desolate. Jeremiah 49:2. Sound the alarm of war. In Rabbah of the Amorites, it shall be a desolate heap. So Rabbah of the Amorites is going to be a desolate heap. Then we have Basra, that shall be a desolation. That's Jeremiah 49:13. So what we're seeing, the theme here, is that in the end of times there are specific nations that have been decreed to be made desolate. And as we saw earlier, Moab is going to be a desolation, and that is going to happen in their year of visitation. So again, the day of visitation, the day of Yahuwah, they're for the most part one and the same. The different names, I believe, tell you different things about them, but also when you look at the context of what it's talking about, you can tell it's still the same thing. And so Jeremiah 48:44, he that fleeth from fear shall fall into the pit, and he that goeth up out of the pit shall be taken in the snare. For I will bring upon it, even upon Moab, the year of their visitation, saith Yahuwah. Okay, so basically that's the core of this verse. It's really just about war and desolation. And so it's self-explanatory. It's just saying at the end of war, desolations are determined. You can expect war and desolation in the end times. All right, thank you so much and take care.